Okay, hey folks. So my name is Aaron Chen. Just starting the stream now, and I will be continuing what I started last week, which was building a Raspberry Pi cluster. So for those of you who missed last week's stream, you can find it in the channels that you probably linked to from here.
Okay, hey folks.
You'll know that
So
I actually built this
Aaron
cluster
Chen.
here. It's now
Just
running
starting the stream now, and I will be continuing what I started.
Wow, I can't
last
believe
week,
I forgot the
which was
microphone.
building a
I
Raspberry Pi
am
cluster.
building this
So,
cluster
for
here,
those of you who
and
missed
it's
last
running
week's
with all these
stream,
fancy
you
lights
can
and
find
stuff.
it in the
And
channels that you
basically, what it
probably
is
linked to
it's
from here.
two Raspberry Pi
And
4s,
you'll
the
know
4
that
gig
I
model,
actually built this
and
cluster
they are
here.
linked
It's now
together
running
with
fancy
a
lights.
power over Ethernet
Wow, I
system,
can't believe I forgot the microphone.
specifically this switch on
I
top.
am building this
And
cluster
I have
here,
linked
and it's
or
running
connected a
all these fancy
keyboard
lights
and
and
mouse
stuff.
to the
And
first one.
basically what it is it's two
So
Raspberry Pi 4s,
let
the
me
4
switch
gig
the input
model,
on the monitor.
and they are linked together with a
I
power
plugged it in a
over
while
Ethernet
ago and I
system,
wasn't using it, so now it's, of
specifically
course,
the switch
it's
on
going to
top.
sleep.
And I have linked
But
connected a
we
keyboard
should be
and
able
mouse
to
to
swap
the
over.
first one.
Yeah, there we go. Cool. Um,
So
so,
switch input on the monitor.
um, one, I'm a
Plugged
data
in a while
scientist
ago.
and it is currently
Of course,
quarantine.
it's gonna sleep.
And I wanted to pick up some data engineering skills that would be useful for my job and
Yeah,
different
there we go.
projects
Cool.
and stuff. And one of the things that I thought would be really good was if I had
Why I'm
actually
doing
taken
this,
some Raspberry
one,
Pi
I'm a
stuff
data
and built
scientist,
this
and
cluster.
it is currently
And that
quarantine.
way I'd have
And I
better
wanted to
experience,
pick
like
up some
hands-on
data
experience
engineering
dealing with things
skills
like
that would
Spark,
be my job and different projects and
and
stuff.
Kubernetes
And
and
one of the things
Docker,
that I
and it's like
thought
all
was
cool
would be
stuff,
really good was
useful
if
for
I
data
actually
science,
taken some Raspberry
especially
Pi stuff and
Spark with
built this
handling machine
cluster.
learning training things,
And that
because
way
there
I
are
have better
libraries that
experience,
have been
hands-on
built for
experience
Spark that
dealing
allow you
with
to do
things
machine
Spark
learning.
and
So,
Kubernetes and Docker,
plus
and it's like all cool
taking this
stuff
off and
useful
putting it
for
into a
data science.
cluster, even though the
Especially
Raspberry
Spark with
Pi,
handling
even
machine
this
learning
like the
training
fancy
things,
Model
because there
4
are
that I've got, and
libraries
two of them
that have been built for
are
Spark that
probably
allow you
not
to
as
do
powerful
machine
as my
learning.
laptop. I think
So,
it's actually good practice because
plus
it gives me the
taking this
experience of
off
like
and putting it into a
doing the
cluster,
Unix admin
even though
stuff,
the
setting
Raspberry
up the
Pi,
extra
even
hardware,
this
SSHing
fancy
into a
Model 4
remote
that I've
server,
got into them,
and then running
are
the
probably
jobs
not
actually
as powerful as
remotely
my
instead of
laptop.
locally on my
I think it's
computer.
actually good
And
practice because
personally, I think
it
it's
gives
really
me the
good because,
experience
like,
of
in a
like
real world
doing the
corporate
Unix
scenario,
admin stuff, setting up the extra
there's
hardware,
absolutely no
SSHing
way
into a
that I'd
remote
be able to
server,
take like
and then running the
regular
job
large
actually
company
remotely
data and
instead of
operate
locally
it
on my
completely from my
computer.
laptop.
And
That's like
personally, I think
I,
it's
I
really
don't
good
under, I
because
don't know
like in
how
a
that
real
would ever
world
happen.
corporate scenario,
I went to a
there's
seminar from
absolutely no way
employee
that
at
I'd be
Uber,
able to take
and it was
like
really cool to learn
regular
about like
large
what
company
kinds of
data and
problems like
operate it
actual
completely from my
like big
laptop.
companies have
That's
to
like,
deal with in
yeah,
terms of like
I don't
actual
know
big
how that would
data.
ever happen.
And with
I
Uber,
went to a
what they
seminar
mentioned was
from
like, you're
employee
handling
Uber,
like
and it was
petabytes of
really
data,
cool to learn about like
which is
what
a
kinds of
peta
problems
is
like
a, what was
actual
it?
like big
One a peta
companies
is a
have to deal
delicious
with in terms
flatbread.
of actual
And
big
two,
data.
it's like
And
a
with
thousand
Uber,
terabytes, I
what they
think. So
mentioned is
it's
like
way
you're
more
handling
than
like
anything I
petabytes
would
of data,
ever deal with.
which is a
Even my
peta is
trusty
one
long in the
is a
tooth
delicious
desktop
flatbread.
down here, I think
And
total
two,
it's
it's
only
like
got like,
1,000
I don't know,
terabytes,
like
I think.
30
So it's
terabytes
way
on there.
more
So
than anything I
having
would
the
ever deal with.
just trying to
Even
wrap my
my
mind about
trusty
working with like
long
petabytes
in
of
the
data
tooth
is just
desktop down here, I
it just
think
blows my
total it's
mind.
only got like
So I figured, like,
30
obviously,
terabytes on
for that
there.
type of
So
work, I
I'm
would never do it on my laptop. It would
just trying to
never
wrap
fit in
my
the
mind
storage,
about
much less
working
the
with like
RAM.
petabytes of data.
So
Just
figuring out ways
it
to
just blows
get
my
large
mind.
data sets to work on
So
limited
I
hardware
figured
seemed
like
like a really good
obviously
challenge to
for
learn.
that type of
And
work,
that
I
was
would
why I
never do it on
decided
my
to pick up
laptop.
these
It would
Raspberry Pi
never fit in the
pieces.
storage,
So
much
what
less
I'm
the
showing
RAM.
now is actually
So figuring out ways to get large data sets to
the
work on limited
instructions
hardware
for
seemed
the
like a really
Raspberry
good
Pi on
challenge to
like how
learn.
to download
And
the
that was
OS.
why I decided to
And to be honest, this was
find
actually a
pieces.
problem I
So
had
what I'm
before
showing
last
now is
week.
actually
So by default, if you're using the Windows
instructions
installer
for
to
the
do
Raspberry
these
Pi
things,
on like how to
for
download
some
the
reason, it
OS.
would not
And to
actually
be honest,
format the
this is
SD
actually a
card to
problem I
be the
had before
correct
last
format.
week. So
When
by
I
default,
formatted
if you're using
everything
the Windows
according to the directions,
installer to do these things,
I
for
plugged the
some
card
reason
into
it
the
would not
computer
actually
or
format
into
the
the Raspberry
SD card
Pis, and
to be
it
the
just
correct
never
format.
booted.
When
So
I
last week turned
formatted
into this
everything
whole like
according to the
troubleshooting thing to make
directions,
sure like the Raspberry Pis
I
weren't dead on
plugged the card
arrival
into
or the
the
cards weren't
computer
dead on
into the
arrival.
Raspberry Pis,
Um,
and it just
but
never
what I
booted.
quickly learned was like,
So
you know,
last week turned into this whole like
don't
troubleshooting
follow
thing to make
their
sure that the
the
Raspberry Pi
Pi
wasn't dead on arrival.
OS, the the
cards have been on
Raspbian
arrival.
instructions that they had
But what I
before
quickly learned was
because they were not entirely synced
don't
up with how you
follow
needed to
their,
actually do things.
the Pi
What ended up fixing things
OS,
for
the
sure
Raspbian,
was they used an
instructions
installer,
that they
which
had
was
before,
much slower,
because they
and I
were
believe
not
that
entirely
actually
synced up
formatted
with
the
how you
cards
needed to
correctly,
actually do things.
but it wasn't
What
clear
ended
that
up
that would
fixing
it
things
would
for
do that
sure
ahead of
was
time. So eventually got that working. I was using this script, not this blog article. Andrew here, let me make sure it's actually readable or legible. Let's make that a little bit bigger. Yeah. Oops.
Not script, but this
One
blog article.
slightly dangerous thing about how this Pi is configured right now is that it is everything is exposed. So I have to remember to make sure like keeping cables away as much as I can. But I was following this guide here. And this Irish engineer and former astrophysicist, Andrew, did this really cool thing explaining like why you'd want to use Spark, how it works, like why big data, et cetera, kind of the things I'd mentioned before. And he actually managed to get this Spark cluster running on, I think, 8 Raspberry Pis. Personally, like Pis are fairly inexpensive. They're only about like $35, I think, the model that he got if you just want the computer. But I quickly noticed like once you actually put together the pieces necessary to build the thing, it does cost quite a bit of money. So like I think his 8-unit Raspberry Pi cluster with the cards, with the power over Ethernet switch, with the Ethernet cables, and then with the chassis, he got like this like really fancy chassis. It costs like almost $1,000, which is basically the cost of a computer and like a pretty good one. So it's kind of unclear like will this cluster outperform say a traditional computer? I don't know. I do know that it is a lot smaller. So if you can kind of tell on the stream right now, this thing is actually the Pi cluster. Yeah, the case came with this fan, which is really good because the Raspberry Pi 4 there is a recommendation to use some sort of active cooling. So this fan is actually helping to get all the heat away from the computer, or the little computers. And you can see like this thing is actually designed to hold 4 blades, and I only have 2 in there. So 4 computers for a total of, I think each Raspberry Pi 4 is 2 cores. Don't think it's a quad core. You could potentially anyway have 4 Pis in there, just running as a cluster, and it's like there's a little handle, you can just pick it up. It's really easy to move around, so it's like a proof of concept thing. Or if you just wanted something portable to do any sort of machine learning tasks or handle larger sets of data, this thing's great. So that's kind of one of the advantages. If you wanted to make like $1,000 PC, like or $1,000 cluster, comparing it to $1,000 full-on PC, odds are that PC would still be bigger, and you wouldn't have this like practice of dealing with the distributed computing system. So I think this is really cool. Following Andrew's directions, there were some problems, so I had to actually compile a bunch of different sets of instructions together to actually get this thing to work. But it does actually work. So if you look on here, like on this screen right now, unfortunately I can't show on the stream because I don't have a video capture card for it. Basically, actually, you know what? I probably could. I could actually try to stream. You know what? I probably could. That's a cool to-do thing. So I will add to the to-do list to figure out a way to get OBS on here and see if I can just stream this to the streaming computer, and I can at least show what's going on, at least better than like you trying to see the screen. Yeah, you definitely cannot see that right now. There's too much glare on the screen. But I do have it running. Let me write that down as a to-do list. I'll just type it onto my laptop in sticky notes. But yeah, I would love to hear in chat if anyone has actually gotten one of these to work, what kinds of stuff that they're running on it. I personally want to run some NLP projects that are a little bit harder, and I would love to run like very complicated machine learning sets. Like if I have to train a model for a long time, yeah, it'd be slower to train it on here, but also it'd be good to set up the job on my laptop to queue up on the Pi cluster and then use my computer for something else. So I'm going to install OBS on the Pi cluster and figure out how to stream it to my streaming PC for potential usage in the future, for potential usage on future streams. And I'm sure you've probably noticed, but this is not my normal hair. We are definitely in this COVID season, and I still cannot get my hair cut, which is totally fine. It is really hot in here in California right now, so that's not the great thing. Definitely makes working out harder, and the hair just kind of slaps in my eyes. Whatever, you just got to deal with it in the future. So where we're at right now, this cluster based off of Andrew and a couple other things I kind of compiled together. Things he was missing, for example, like I have got, if we open up the command line, so I'm going to open terminal in the Pi cluster, and it is running. I'm going to make this bigger, but I know you're not going to be able to see it. So it is running, and what I can do is I can actually just SSH. I've got 2 Pi units, and I can SSH into Pi 2 because I called the second unit Pi 2, and I logged straight into SSH. I've got or logged straight into the Pi 2. Everything is set up with a public-private key pair. And I don't know, I think it's pretty cool. I'm actually, so this thing is 2 computers. I'm able to control potentially all of them. In the future, I will upgrade this thing so it can handle bigger tasks. And once I get like 4 or ideally 8, like Andrew has, units in one cluster, I think it'd be super cool because like part of the stuff I borrowed from, let me log out of Pi 2. Part of the stuff I borrowed from Andrew's post is he actually put some Unix shell scripts in here, so I can actually do like cluster command. Like one thing that has changed with the Raspberry Pi OS, and there's a big change today, which we'll talk about. With Raspberry Pi OS, or Raspbian, as it was formerly known, Raspbian got rid of like default installs for Java and also for Spark, and there's another thing that I actually had to install later. But like one of the things that I borrowed from Andrew's shell scripting is I wrote this like I'm using this function called cluster command, and what that does is it lets me like just basically I just write cluster command and the command I want to do on each unit in the cluster. So I want to say cluster command Java version, Java dash version. And what it'll do is actually tell me the version of Java that's installed on all of them. So this is something I had to do differently because before the base install of Java was non-existent. So it was really nice. Like I actually just did like cluster command sudo apt get apt get I think it was open Java. I can't remember right now, but basically like when there was something I wanted to install on all of them, I just did this cluster command and it went and would just get it for me, and I didn't have to log into each Pi unit separately. So with only 2 units, it's not that much of a hassle, or what doesn't seem like that much of a hassle. But in the initial config, when I was making everything, it was actually quite annoying. So one of the things with the Pis is that the keyboard and mouse and display are not all hot swappable. So basically, every time I made a change in, say, Bash RC, actually that's a bad example. Every time I made a system configuration change and wanted to switch over to the other one, I would actually have to force a shutdown and then unplug all the stuff, plug it into the new one, and then cause it to boot up. So one thing with the Pis is there's no dedicated power button, so you have to get into this habit of kind of shutting down from the OS and then waiting for everything to actually turn off in terms of things on the display, and then actually, in this case, unplugging the units. Since I've hooked everything up to power over Ethernet, that meant either unplugging the switch or unplugging the Ethernet cables in the back. So it was a really big learning experience. I wired actually all the Ethernet cables myself, so I have like bulk cable and the little crimper and cutter. So I didn't want to buy a bunch of like, I don't know, like 6-inch cables, 8-inch cables, and especially now since it's not really an essential purchase. So I just cut all the cables myself. So I don't know. I'm really excited to use this thing. One thing I noticed with the chassis, which I think is really cool, there's actually a lot of space on each of the blades on the chassis. So I don't know if I can rotate it, and I don't know if you'd be able to see, but the acrylic that's holding the Raspberry Pi. So it's actually about this big, but the Pi itself, for some reason, I don't know who designed the acrylic. The Pi itself is credit card size, so it's actually only about half of the size that it would that it takes. Sorry, the Pi only takes about half of the footprints of each holder. So what I'm thinking when I actually get this working, I want to actually unmount the Pis and then drill new holes in the acrylic and mount them to the side. And the reason why I want to do that is because I want to put new holes to the side that would let me put a 2.5-inch hard drive in there. So if I'm able to do that, I can actually hook up that hard drive to a USB port in the back of each Pi, such that each Pi node would basically have its own extra large storage attached, potentially. So I think that's actually good and kind of a lot more useful. The micro SD cards, you can't get them very large. The biggest ones on the market, I believe, are 400 gigs, although the specification goes up to 2 terabytes. But the 400 gig micro SD cards are very expensive. Like one of them costs more than this entire thing right here. The other thing with micro SD cards, which like every Raspberry Pis are really cool, and the fans who love them and use them, they're really passionate group of hackers and coders and data scientists and data engineers like trying to use these things. That's really cool, but one of the limitations of the Pi is that by relying on micro SD cards, it's actually a very unstable medium. SD cards are kind of like semi-disposable. So one of the things I actually had to address in Andrew's instructions here was to actually remove this thing called swap. So basically, like if you don't know, if your computer runs out of memory, it's going to try to use some of the storage. So with Linux, it has this like extra partition for swap, which basically treats storage as part of like an extended, slightly slower memory. The only issue is that with swap, it's constantly reading and writing from that section. And that's not great for micro SD cards, which are only rated to about 1,000 read-write cycles. So someone did the math, and they said, I have to find the source, but someone did the math on like if you left swap on a micro SD card and the Pi decided to constantly use it, what you'd end up doing is basically killing the micro SD card after only about a month. So that's not great. Like if you're trying to do a long training thing, or you're wanting this to be dependent as like a thing that just runs in the background, you don't have to worry about it, then you definitely want to disable swap. And that way, like, it will just stick to memory, or it basically just tries to do as little read-write as possible on the micro SD card. And that's why I want to actually get a regular storage mechanism for this thing. Yeah, so anyway, we've got Java installed. How it has to work to get Spark running is you need the Pis to run. You need to configure them so that you can control one from, or all of them from just one, which we've done, or I've done. And then after that, you have to get Java working. And then after that, you have to install Hadoop. So if we do cluster command, it's honestly been a few days since I looked at this thing because I was basically doing other stuff. And I just can't remember if I actually installed Hadoop. So we're going to do cluster command -version, or cluster command Hadoop -version, and Hadoop is not installed. At least it looks like it's not installed. So what we've got is cluster command Hadoop dash version. On one computer, Hadoop functions. Oh, okay. Now I remember. So what happened was Hadoop, even though it's a distributed cluster file system, you have to configure it differently for the master node from the other nodes in the network. So I was in the middle of configuring this thing for the master node, which is Pi 1 that I've got all this stuff plugged into right now. So I have to finish the install for Hadoop on the master node. Then I can actually go ahead and try to get this thing running. So on the single node setup, I'm following along the Andrew's instructions right now, which I am going to put in chat. So that is paste. Okay. Control V. So those are the instructions I'm following. And for initial setup, of course, you can go to the Raspberry Pi Foundations thing, which is right here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go on, before I forget, I really like the Pi. I think it's really cool because there's just a lot of stuff you can do with it. And it's really small, so you can like put this computer like pretty much anywhere. Like I think one really cool thing it would be if you can get this sort of thing working, like because of its size, and if you can get it to be more stable, you can actually deploy this thing in places where like regular computers or laptops can't go, right? So like how cool would it be to have like a little machine learning cluster, like if the power requirements were low enough, you could hook it up to like a long-term battery or solar cell and then like deploy this thing in the field and then be able to do this kind of advanced machine learning stuff, albeit slowly, but completely removed from the cloud. And then you don't have dependence on like, oh, how do we get the excess data and all that kind of stuff to far reaches of our network, et cetera, et cetera. You can just like set that up and let it run. But the big news today that the Raspberry Pi Foundation announced was that there's a brand new version of the Raspberry Pi 4. And I think it's really, really cool. Like I'm showing it right now. At least it should be showing right now on the stream. Yeah. So this is an 8 gig memory version of the Raspberry Pi 4. I think it's really cool because like I have the 4 gig. 4 gigs of memory was a lot, like when it launched. I think the Raspberry Pi 3 that I had only had like 1 or 2, and it was okay. Like it definitely, you could tell that there's a shortage of memory. Going to 8 gigs is like actually really surprising, to be completely honest with you. Like 8 gigs is how much memory my Surface Pro 3. Yeah, I have a Surface Pro 3. I think I had to upgrade to get 8 gigs of memory on my Surface Pro 3. So the idea of like having this like credit card sized computer that has 8 gigs of memory can just handle a lot more stuff. I think that's awesome. So in the future, like this got announced for immediate availability today. In the future, when I actually add more nodes to this cluster, I am actually going to try to get this like 8 gig one or whatever the newest version is at the time, because having 8 gigs of memory just like makes it a lot more productive. Like if I got more of those 8 gig nodes, the combined cluster would have a lot more memory, so it would allow Spark to work a little bit better. But on the other hand, like getting it to run on lower end hardware is a good challenge, and if you know it can run on lower end hardware, it should run on the higher end hardware. So if you're thinking about getting a Raspberry Pi yourself, I'm going to put this in chat too. I think this is a really cool press announcement. Obviously, you do not have to get the Pi 4 with 8 gigs of memory. It just came out. It will take a while to get to you, et cetera, et cetera. But if you can afford like the newest one from them, it should be a lot better. Granted, the 4 gig one that I've got, it is 2/3 the price, so it's up to you. Just check that out if you're looking to try this kind of stuff yourself. And otherwise, like we'll get back to trying to configure this thing to run Hadoop. Basically, let's see. Did I Single node setup. When I installed Raspbian, this is also Raspbian, blah, 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 blah. So all Pis have an acceptable version of Java installed by default. Next, we can download and install Hadoop. I'll start by building a single node setup on the master node, like this one. Then it's missing a word, the worker nodes to create a multi-node cluster. On Pi 1, get Hadoop with the following commands. So if we go back to, oh no, whoops, okay, dropped my notebook. That's fine. I'll put this mouse away. Okay, so we're going to scroll down a little bit. Oh, too many cables, too many computers on one desk. It'll be fine. So if we scroll down a bit, we can see we are just on Raspberry Pi 1, so we're going to say Hadoop version, and that's probably what gave the long error message. Yeah, okay. So on this computer, I did install Hadoop. So now we need to sudo and then change the permissions on the directory. You know what? I think I had a slight issue with this before. So where are we? So we have got Spark there. Did I skip a step and just install Spark? Hope I didn't. Okay, no. Okay, cool. CD ls. So we want to sudo tar xvf spark. I think I removed. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so let's see. I already unzipped it and I installed Hadoop. That means, and then I removed that. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to go back into the directory where I put all the configurations for Hadoop. And I think, if I remember right, some of those are actually on this computer, on the cluster itself, because I found some of the instructions from Andrew to still be missing some clarification. So I had also found this this instruction set. Someone had this wiki, and let me see if I can actually post this for you in chat. So it is widrickson.com Raspberry Pi 2 dash Hadoop cluster. Okay, hopefully that works. But yeah, so I started following along with this, these instructions. Let me see if I can make these bigger, possibly make them legible on the stream. But you can kind of tell, like, when it zooms in and out, that like the Raspberry Pi is quite a bit slower than a real computer, even when it's streaming. So yeah. So we're going to go through the setup. So this person's using 3 Raspberry Pi 2s, which is, I mean, they got Hadoop working on Raspberry Pi 2. That only has a gig of RAM. That's kind of impressive. And then all of the things about like why Hadoop is special. Let's see. Update system and install Java, configure Hadoop user, did that, compile. So I did install it. I didn't have to compile. And I'm not entirely sure why this had to be compiled. So I do miss on Windows having the easy ability to do fitting to the screen. So let's do this, and let's do this. Cool, 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 cool. It's so fun to watch someone on stream just drag window borders left and right. But yeah, so we have to. All right, so let's go into sudo. Oh, I'm cutting off the bottom of the screen, so that's not good because I need to read that. Here we go. Let's do sudo nano etc dhcpcd.config. So what I'm doing is I'm temporarily adopting root privileges, and I'm using the editor nano to open this configuration file, and just making sure. Cool, that file doesn't exist. That's not right. So let's cd up, cd, we'll just go home, nano etc dhc pcd.config. That is really weird. If I log, so I'm going to just navigate to that directory. So I'm peeking through this now. dhc pcd.conf. Okay. Sudo nano dhc pc. There we go. I'm not sure why that didn't open. Okay, so we're just going to make sure that we are using all of the same, what's it called? Same configurations as Widrickson? Jonas Widrickson is using. Okay, so a little bit of different. He was saying to add these things at the bottom. I did not. I just uncommented something that already looked like the thing I was looking for. So I am using the Ethernet interface because that's how the two Pi units are interacting. My static IP address is different. I set a static IP address in the tens because my local network is actually already 192, so I couldn't use that. I don't have a static router. I should probably change that. Yeah. You know what? It's because he is using 3 different units. So I'm going to have to add that anyway. Okay, so we're going to add commented lines. So static IP underscore address equal 10.0.0.2, 24. We don't have another one, so we don't have to worry about adding the third thing. And then static routers should be just 10.0.0. What is my router configuration? Okay. That is a good question. You know what? I'm going to leave that commented out. And I'll have to for sure figure that part out later. But for now, we have the static domain servers. We changed change domain servers to your environment. Note that we're not required to make any changes to EC interfaces in Raspbian and Jessie. Okay, so we made these changes for the local configuration. We're going to save those changes. File on disk has changed. File was modified since you opened it. Didn't I do the modification? Okay, so update system, install Orca Java, configure the Hadoop user, did all that. Check all that stuff. Cool. So we need to edit the Hadoop XML file. So let's see. We need to go sudo nano Hadoop. Ooh. We need to find the actual folder that this is in. Let's see. Man, this is really good reason to write down all of your steps and where you are before you stop working on something for a few days. Because now I am just kicking past me for not making it clear what my next steps were. Oh well. So CD, CD, where are we? We already have Spark. I'm going to CD back home. That's really strange that I can't find, what is, it's really strange that I can't find Hadoop even though it's already installed. I think because I got it to work already. So SDHD user, sorry, SU HD user. Oh gosh, I might have forgotten my password. That's not it. I can't believe you've done this. Let's see. Yeah. So, I actually think I forgot my password. And that's really weird because I thought I also added all those keys in and wouldn't need the password. Okay, so this means I'm still going to have to sudo into HD user. So I will still have to make a password. Okay, well, as you can see, I have given myself more homework to do. And I got to figure out why, when I did the moving of the this public key into the authorized key for the Hadoop user, why that did not work. That is odd because it definitely worked earlier. And there's no way I can guess and check the password because I know I made something that I would not remember. So this is going to be fun. Let's see. How can I fix this problem? I could just make a new user. I could easily do that, which is kind of defeats the purpose. Let's see. Why didn't I wonder if the password's just... Gosh, I really should have made better notes for myself when I stopped using this. I really thought I'd get back to it within like an hour. Well, anyway, I would love to hear any other suggestions for building these things, because even this one, as you can see, like there's, I would argue, like extraneous steps, and I think this may be part of the reason why I took a break from working on this, because like building from source, while is good, was, I believe, entirely unnecessary for me to do that, because I don't remember doing. Like I remember looking at like they had a Jonas here had instructions on how to compile from source, as well as using an older version of Java, and I did not have to do that. It just worked straight away when I tried to install. So yeah, this is gonna be fun. I think I'm gonna take this off stream so I can keep doing this. But otherwise, like maybe I also added. I have a feeling, I wonder if I also made some changes by combining these two instructions to get them to work. So yeah, this is going to be fun. I think I'm going to take this off stream so I can keep doing this. But otherwise, like maybe I also added. Okay, so Hadoop does work. I also made some changes by combining these two instructions to get them to work. Spark does not work, but I have the installation. But it is difficult now because I have a locked user that is supposed to be my Spark user, my Hadoop user. I guess that's not entirely necessary because I'm looking at Andrew's instructions here, and he does not make a separate user group to deal with Hadoop, which probably is not the best thing to do. It's probably better to follow along with Jonas's suggestions and making sure you have a separate Hadoop user from your actual Pi user account. But yeah, so this has been once again like really good for me to learn some stuff and just kind of work through these things. I think clearly I was at the stage where I wanted to install Spark, because if I look in the original folder when I logged in, you can see that there's a Spark tarball like right there, and it's ready to go. So I believe that that's where I'm at right now. But I will have to backtrack. In fact, let me actually do what I should have done and take some notes as to where I am. So, whoops, wrong keyboard. Basically, where we are at with the stream is need to configure Hadoop user, make sure SSH key is in authorized keys, or make the password easier to remember. After that, check Jonas. Jonas Widrickson site for instructions on, if necessary, compiling source, compiling Hadoop from source on for ARM if necessary. What else? And then make sure Hadoop user account can access Hadoop correctly, and then install Spark. And looks like after that you have to change some configuration files. Got some bash scripts in here from Andrew. Actually kind of a lot. And then after that is actually making sure that you can actually get the worker nodes working. Okay, so cool. I have got I wanted to do a really short stream. I was really excited that I could get the Spark cluster to work. Obviously, the distributed computing part of it does require some focus and attention. I did make, in my opinion, I made good progress because I did have to combine I think it was 4 or 5 different articles in order to get this thing to work. Because a lot of this stuff, frankly, was out of date. Even this had the one from Jonas, I think, is published in 2017. 2016. Yeah. So a number of things have changed. Spark is on a different version, Hadoop's on a different version. But yeah. So if you wanted to do something like this yourself, you can follow the instructions, try to combine a bunch of the things that I posted. I'm honestly probably going to write up an article on how to do this, one that's a lot more recent. 2016 from Jonas, and then I think this, even this one from Andrew was published in 2019. Yeah, so it was updated in July 2019, but there's stuff on here that it doesn't apply to modern version of Raspbian and now Raspberry Pi OS. So I may I don't know if I can do a pull request on his article and suggest changes to make it more up to date. But at least I can make something that references this and updates it. So yeah, if you have any questions or you want to reach out, my contact information should be in the stream. You can see my Instagram, my Twitch, Facebook, and my YouTube channel, which is probably what you're watching me on. Some combination of all those. If you want to reach out to me, you can find me or on my website, which is going to be put in chat, which is aaronwchen.github.io. That's my portfolio site. It's the easiest way to contact me. I'm pretty excited. I'm going to get back on this stuff to get it working. But otherwise I wanted to have a short stream and just update y'all on cool stuff that's happening with my cluster. And then also things that Raspberry Pi even updated with. They had a lot of really exciting announcements. Part of why I was actually looking forward to getting this thing working. So once I get this working with Spark, I think I'll also try to learn some Scala, just to learn even more skills. But until then, I will catch y'all on next stream. Could be Sunday, could be Wednesday or Thursday. Normal stream on Sunday and Wednesday. This past Sunday, stuff came up, couldn't really make it. And then yesterday, more stuff came up, couldn't do it. This coming Sunday, usually I try to do art streams on Sunday. Last time I think I ended up working on this stuff anyway. And then Wednesday for sure is usually data science stuff, but this week was on Thursday, whatever happens. Looking forward to hearing from y'all, and I hope to hear from y'all soon. And I really hope to get this thing working so I can get some actual projects done. That would be so cool, right? All right, I will talk